Connan caught up with the WTO Director General right before the announcement made by Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross.
Donald Trump has put the WTO in a crisis, or in a way, is it a wake-up call that could actually save the WTO?
Depends on how you look at it. It could be both. I think clearly...
Could be a savior of the WTO long term?
I wouldn't go there.
China has threatened to retaliate to the U.S. tariffs already announced. What will happen? What would it mean for the WTO if this becomes reality?
I think it introduces elements of that complicate.
Caroline, you're surrounded by trade ministers, by the WTO, who you've just been speaking to. What's the reaction on the ground to the fact that these tariffs have indeed been brought in?
Obviously, the reaction is not very good over here. The French Finance Minister Bruno Le Maire is going to react in the next few minutes. And what we can say is that what Cecilia Malmström, the EU trade chief, just said in a statement is that today is a bad day for world trade. That's what she said in a joint statement with the EU Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker. The EU, who is, of course, threatening to retaliate in the next few hours. You know that the EU had already threatened to retaliate on 2.8 billion euros of American products, including Bourbon whiskey, Harley-Davidson motorcycles, or Levi-Strauss jeans. We will see what this retaliation means for the EU, for Canada and Mexico, but obviously the mood is not very good here at the OECD after this announcement.
Caroline, do we know how quickly Europe actually imposed those tariffs? I mean, the US had always said May 31st, June 1st. Has Europe put a date on when these retaliatory tariffs could go into effect?
To date on these retaliation measures on these 2.8 billion euros of US goods as June 20. We will see whether these retaliation measures actually are announced earlier or taking effect earlier. Jean-Claude Juncker said it could be in the next few hours, so we'll have to wait, obviously, to see what these measures are. Obviously, Cecilia Malmström, the EU trade chief here, has been lobbying over the past few days, just like she's done over the past couple of months, trying to convince her U.S. counterpart, Wilbur Ross, to change Donald Trump's mind, and she's been saying that obviously the final decision relied on Donald Trump, the U.S. president, and we'll have to wait and see right now what the response is from the EU, but the WTO director did warn me about the domino effect this could cause on the trade system.
Some more breaking news now. We have a response from Mexico. Mexico is also now going to take reciprocal actions versus the United States, according to the Economy Ministry. It's going to impose tariffs on flat steel, on lamps, on pork legs, sausages, apples, grapes, cranberries, some cheeses, and possibly other products. Once again, Mexico is taking retaliatory steps on things like steel and on agricultural products, as long as fruit is included in those as well. Caroline?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm going to pick it up with Caroline now.
Obviously, see from the EU as well.
Apologies, Caroline. Give us a sense. Of course, we're seeing the reaction there, but what about... There's always the difficulty of having the same name, hey? But what are you thinking about the WTO reaction now? You said that there's going to be a domino effect. How do they brace themselves when we've also got Wilbur Ross saying that they're outdated, they need to change? I mean, this is a difficult time for the WTO to try and reinvent itself when they're going to suddenly have an awful lot on their plate.
It is a very difficult time, and it's true that a lot of people have called for WTO reform, saying that the system is outdated. You know, the first rules on global trade were established after World War II in 1947, even though the WTO was only created in 1995. So these rules are clearly outdated, and Macron, the French president, has been calling here at the OECD for urgent reforms of the WTO. The directors seem to be open to the reforms, and in fact, he did say that these tariffs from Donald Trump could be a wake-up call and actually point at the shortcomings of the current WTO rules. So we will see whether this has, in the long term, actually a positive effect on a reform agenda that could happen as soon as the next few months. There's a G20 in Argentina in December, and the WTO director told me this should be on top of the agenda at this G20.
All right, Caroline Connan, thank you. Caroline is reporting from Paris. Of course, my co-host Caroline is in